Walk and talk with the church attorney. Here's the question that I got from an amazing client meeting last week. Which document governs when there's a conflict between the Articles of Incorporation and the bylaws for a church? Let's get into it. So, first of all, one of the critical things that we cover in the Faithful Foundations membership, which is a membership for critical legal insights for churches and church leaders who are part of operations, we have to understand the legal basis for the documents that govern church operations. I know that sometimes when we think about church, we think about what I call the outward facing activities, our services, the message, which is powerful, the music, hopefully the ministry programs, right? But none of those things are possible if we don't have a clear and solid foundation for the legal operations in the church, right? So in creating a church under the law, that's done by filing Articles of Incorporation with the Secretary of State. Every state and the District of Columbia has a Secretary of State that manages filing of legal documents, specifically formation documents like the Articles of Incorporation. And those things have to comport with or be in alignment with what the state law outlines. So your Articles of Incorporation are filed with the state. They are essentially the birth certificate for the church. The bylaws, on the other hand, it's an internal governing document. It's not filed generally with the state. And just like with the Articles of Incorporation, there may be indicators from state law, what we call in the law statutory law, on what needs to be in the bylaws. So your articles are going to cover things like the legal name of the church, going to cover who the resident or registered agent is, the purpose of the organization, and it will also usually outline how we start the engine, the legal engine, right? So it's going to have your incorporators and maybe your initial members of the board. On the other hand, their bylaws are going to cover how does that board operate? What makes up a quorum? How frequently will the board meet? What officers will there be? All of those things. So when there's a conflict between the articles and the bylaws, first of all, that can be very problematic because when there is an issue, it's going to be important that those two critical documents that certainly courts will consider say the same thing. But when there's a conflict, the Articles of Incorporation will generally supersede. So a part of what I do with the church attorney legal audit is to review that the church actually has all of the legal documents that it should have in place. And number two, that those legal documents actually agree with each other, that there's not a conflict. So that was a great question. What legal document governs between the Articles of Incorporation and bylaws when there's a conflict? And the answer is the articles. So make sure you check yours today. And as I say, related to the bylaws, the 80s may have been an amazing time, but they shouldn't have been the last time that your bylaws were reviewed. So it's usually when there's time for review or revision, it's usually best to review both of those documents together to make sure that they're properly in alignment, both with state law, with federal law, and each other. So I'd like to invite you to grab our newsletter. It's free, generally comes out every week. and we get into these kinds of important topics. All right, God bless. Bye.